On WNYC. With us now, Queens and Nassau Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi, and he's here not just as a Democratic congressman, but as a Democratic capitalist. After 3 Democratic socialists got nominated for Congress in the New York primary last month, Suozzi helped compose the document called The Promise to America, signed originally by 15 House Democrats or Democratic candidates. The Promise to America rejects socialism and embraces the word capitalism to describe one of its 6 principles. The 6 are capitalism, safety, fiscal responsibility, effective government, common purpose, and patriotism. What's more, for a document written by Democrats, it's pretty harsh in describing the party. It says, quote, "The Democratic Party has lost sight of what has helped it govern and lead successfully historically," unquote. Tom Suozzi's district includes a little bit of northeast Queens, all of northern Nassau County, and a bit of central Nassau on Long Island. The Promise to America website notes he was one of only 2 Democrats to flip a Trump majority district from red to blue for Congress in 2024. Congressman, always good of you to join us. Welcome back to WNYC.
Hey, Brian, always great to talk with you.
How do you mean the word capitalist in Democratic Capitalist? Why embrace that word as a defining label for yourself?
I think it's important to recognize that our system of our economy in the United States of America has been the envy of the world. And a system based upon competition has resulted in more innovation, has lifted more people out of poverty, has made people's lives better. There are very rough edges that come with capitalism. Fortunately, we have a system of democracy in our country that says all men and women are created equal. And even if you're not a good competitor, you should still have a decent life. You shouldn't be relegated to a life of misery. So there are many things that capitalism has not done a good job on in our country, especially currently with income inequality and with not enough people having affordable health insurance or housing or facing different problems we have today. But the best system throughout history has been capitalism, not socialism. Do we need to do things to do better job here in our country? Absolutely. I'm not defending the status quo any way whatsoever. But we need to rely upon this system of competition, which has resulted in the positive things I've mentioned. But we also need to do better job of, for example, rebuilding the middle class in America, of making sure people can afford to buy a house and educate their kids and pay for health insurance and retire without being scared. I'm a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I'll always be a Democrat. But I'm a Democratic capitalist, not a Democratic socialist.
You know, some people these days will find it cringy to proclaim yourself a capitalist as a core defining feature, like you're embracing the oligarchs. And I know you just talked about some, principles of equality, but why shouldn't people react that way?
Well, I guess they'd have to know me. I mean, I've devoted my life to trying to make people's lives better and to fight against the rough edges that have been created in our society to try and make people's lives better. And I think that, the Democratic Socialists, as well as Donald Trump, have done a good job of saying, I feel your pain and I know you're unhappy with things. And our answer is to blow everything up. And I don't think the answer is to blow everything up. I think it is to try and fix the things that we have. If you've ever done a fixing up something at your house or a remodeling, it's easy to demolish things, but then you have to rebuild it. I think we need to repair. We need to mend it, not end it, as Bill Clinton used to say.
So what to you is the word socialist? Because Mamdani and others, Bernie Sanders, would certainly say that they are in the business of building things, not simply destroying things. So what in economic terms that Mayor Mamdani or Bernie Sanders or the congressional nominees advocate for in their platforms, economic things, are you explicitly rejecting?
Well, if you look at the platform of the Democratic Socialists, there's a lot of things not just related to the economy that are kind of scary things, like abolish the Senate and abolish the presidency and defund the police and get rid of prisons and defund the Department of Defense. But as far as economic terms go, Mayor Mamdani wants to increase the taxes in New York City dramatically. And the problem is that people are leaving New York City and leaving New York State because our taxes compared to the rest of the country are so much higher. And it's not working. People, when I was born in 1962, there were over 40 members of Congress from New York State. Today, there's 26 members of Congress, and the next census, it's going down. People are leaving our state because they can't afford to live here. And raising taxes at the local level is not the answer to the question. Do I think we should increase the minimum wage across the United States of America? I absolutely think we should. The minimum wage is $7.25 an hour in 22 states. And we have to increase it dramatically to try and help rebuild the middle class. Do we have to support unions? We absolutely do. We have a lot of unions in New York State that are fantastic organizations that have given people a decent life where they make enough money so they can afford to buy a house and educate their kids, and they have health insurance and they can retire without being scared. But they don't have unions in the rest of the country like they do in New York State. We need to get more unions throughout the rest of the country. We need to support things like the PRO Act, for example, at the national level. There are things that we need to do at the national level and not try and have government-owned supermarkets or government-owned industry. If you look at the Democratic Socialist platform, they want government to control the means of production. That's never worked, and that never will work. So I don't want to be affiliated with the Democratic Socialists.
I'll follow up on that in a second. I just want to invite listeners first to participate. Your calls and texts are welcome for Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi, now the co-author of the Promise to America document, which embraces democratic capitalism over democratic socialism within his party. 212-433 WNYC 212-433-9692. You were talking about owning the means of production. There's an on-paper definition of socialism, which includes the government owning companies in major industries. But I want to ask if the real-world democratic socialists in your party, like Bernie Sanders and Mamdani, aren't actually very similar to the kind of liberal Democrat that you are in terms of most economic policies. Let me start this thread. Let's see. Do we have a clip of Mayor Mamdani ready? There's a clip we were preparing of Mayor Mamdani. Okay, I think we don't have that ready yet. So let me ask you.
While you're looking for that, you go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Congressman. Go ahead.
I think that, it's important to look at what the Democratic Socialists include in their platform. And what they tell you what they believe in, we should believe them.
But that's the premise of my question. There is a national DSA that has these policies on paper, these policies, what you call the platform specifics on paper. Then there's Ron Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, others in real life politics who I think it's fair to say are not advocating the most extreme things that you were just citing.
I don't think it's fair to say that because they should need to be asked those questions. How do they feel about, for example, the Chinese Communist Party? I'm the founder and the co-chair of the Uyghur Caucus. The Uyghurs are Muslim minorities that are held in forced labor camps in China. Why don't we ask Mayor Mamdani, does he support what the Chinese are doing with the Muslim minority in China? Does he support the idea of abolishing the Senate or abolishing the presidency or defunding the police or getting rid of the Department of Defense or these other really extreme things?
He's in office governing now for 6 months, and I don't think I've heard him talk about any of those things.
Well, why don't you ask him specifically the next time you have him on your show? Does he want to get rid of prisons altogether? I mean, that's part of the platform. I mean, I've been in politics for a long time. I've been on your show many times. I'm held accountable for the things that I stand for. I'm held accountable for the platform of the party that I represent.
Well, does it say something to you that he just declined to defund the police? In fact, he ran on keeping the numbers steady in NYPD headcount. And they would argue, there's been a big crime reduction on his watch, continuing what was happening at the end of Eric Adams. They haven't reduced the headcount from Mayor Adams' time. And so you can look at a national platform on paper. I'm asking you if what you're saying he represents, he's actually representing in practice.
Let me make very clear that, Zohran Mamdani is a very intelligent person. He's very charismatic. He's He's a really good politician. And he's done a great job as far as building an organization and becoming the mayor of New York City. That's a major accomplishment. But he's part of an organization, the Democratic Socialists of America, that have a platform with very extreme things that I do not believe in. And I'm going to push back on those things. Do I agree with the diagnosis of the problem that people are facing economic insecurity, that people are unhappy because they go to work every day and they're not making enough money to do the things that I've talked about, buying a house, educating your kids, paying for health insurance, and retiring without being scared? The diagnosis of the problem is something I agree with 100%. I just disagree with the means to get there.
Here's that clip of Mamdani that we were looking for. It's on Meet the Press after he won the Democratic primary for mayor last year.
And when we talk about my politics, I call myself a democratic socialist in many ways inspired by the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there has to be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And as income inequality has declined nationwide, it has increased in New York City. And ultimately, what we need is a city where every single person can thrive.
Mamdani last year citing Dr. King on the need for better distribution of wealth for all God's children in this country and the need to reverse today's rising inequality. As a principle in core economic goals, is there any of that you actually disagree with?
No. I've got a picture of Dr. King over my shoulder. If we were on Zoom, you would see it right now. So I agree with those goals, and I agree with the diagnosis of the problem. And income inequality is a major problem in our country. Since the 1980s, in the 1970s and 80s, we were worried about the Japanese and German car companies, and they were taking over America's economy, and everybody was panicking. And Milton Friedman wrote a paper, and he said, stop worrying about the workers, stop worrying about the community you're in, just worry about the shareholders, and we'll make a lot of money, and everything will be fine. And we did that in America. And the economy in America has been booming since the 1980s. The Dow Jones has gone up thousands of percent, and the GDP has gone up dramatically. The problem is we've hollowed out the middle class, and we've left behind people who go to work every day. And so while there's been a lot of wealth created in America, we haven't shared that wealth with the people who go to work every day. And whether you're a left-wing progressive or a right-wing conservative, we have to get back to a place in America, and I think the Democratic Party should be leading the way there, to a place where in return for working hard, you make enough money so that you can do those things I've been talking about, buying a house, educating your kids, paying for health insurance, and retire without being scared. And I believe that the Democratic Party, under the rubric of democracy and capitalism, have delivered on those messages over much of our nation's history. We are failing right now in that too many people who go to work every day cannot achieve those goals.
On some specific policies, I see you're not for Bernie Sanders-style Medicare for all. But the Sanders camp would say, look at all the savage inequalities our largely capitalist healthcare system still imposes. The regulated capitalism approach isn't working well enough, and you're digging in to preserve that status quo and implying, I guess, that his plan would be...
I want to make it very clear, Brian, I am not defending the status quo, and I never have. I've been fighting for change my entire life and will continue to fight for change. But change doesn't happen on a dime. It doesn't happen overnight. But I am not defending the status quo. As far as Medicare for all, right now there are many people, especially in New York State, that have really great health insurance through their union. There are a lot of people that will never want to give up their existing health insurance that they have. And New York State has done a better job than most states in the United States of America with the lowest rate of uninsured children and the lowest rates of uninsured adults. Whereas places that were losing population in the relative fight for population, like Florida and Texas, have the highest rates of uninsured children and the highest rates of uninsured adults. So there are things that we can do under our existing system, and we've been doing them in New York State and must continue to do more. For example, the Trump administration just eliminated the premium tax credits so that people who make, in my district, for example, $130,000 a year would only have to pay up to 8% of their income for their health insurance under the premium tax credit strategy. So you'd only have to pay $10,000 or $11,000 a year for your health insurance for your family of four if you're making $130,000 a year. By getting rid of the premium tax credits, those people's health insurance went up to $30,000 a year. And as a result, they're not going to buy health insurance. And when they don't buy health insurance, there's less people in the risk pool, and that causes everybody's insurance to go up. So The challenge is not to tear down the entire system. It's to win elections and to reverse policies like this Trump administration has done that are bad for the people that we represent.
Why not just embrace your party as having a big tent? You represent a kind of district with its kind of incomes and other demographics, and you are meeting your constituents where they are, all good. But so are the more Democratic Socialist members of your party in their districts. Rather than write, the Democratic Party has lost sight of what has helped it govern and lead successfully historically, unquote. Maybe that helps Republicans run against them. Why not more of a big tent embrace of the various wings of your party?
I'm all for a big tent and including a lot of diverse voices, and I'll work with anybody. You know, I'm the chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, where I talk often about working across party lines, but I'll also work with everybody in my party to try and make people's lives better. I said as soon as Mamdani was elected that I would work with him to try and improve the quality of life for the people that we represent. I'll work with anybody of goodwill who wants to actually try and make people's lives better. But I want to make it very clear that I do not support the items that are in the Democratic Socialist platform. I have to be crystal clear about that. And I think that there's some insidious forces that are working to try and divide our country further. And I believe that the far left and the far right are part of those insidious forces that are working to pull our country apart. And we need to be working together to try and make people's lives better. People of goodwill must work together to try and make people's lives better.
Have you heard Bernie Sanders talk about supporting the Chinese government oppression of the Uyghurs in work camps, or ending the presidency, or abolishing the Senate?
I haven't heard him specifically talk about those things, no, but I think that everybody should be asked specifically about that platform.
Why that, as opposed to things that are actually
because that's the
in
platform.
play
That's
in
the
American
platform
politics.
that they run upon. I've been asked about throughout my career about the Democratic platform. I've been asked about, this is what the Democratic platforms, people have big fights about their platform. And if Bernie Sanders and Zohran Mamdani are the leaders of the Democratic Socialist movement in the United States of America, then they should be asked about their platform. And if they don't agree with it, then they should move to change it because they are the leaders of this movement in our country. But the platform is very, very dangerous and destructive. And they should be held accountable for that. And I'm holding them accountable. I'm praising Mamdani for his ability to organize and his success in being successful politically. But I do disagree with these platform items.
Listener asks, are you red baiting, trying to paint people who have earnest policy differences with you as scary monsters?
No.
Because you're raising the listener thinks you're raising the most scariest potential parts of DSA on paper platforms.
Okay, but Brian, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been interviewing me and others for many years.
Yes.
Okay? You hold people accountable for their platform. I think that people have to be held accountable for the organizations that they're part of. The same as you have to be held accountable for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or the Conservative Party or the Working Families Party or the DSA. That's a legitimate question.
Here's a supporter, I think, from your district. Danny in Bayside, you're on WNYC with Congressman Tom Suozzi. Hello.
Yes, hello. I support Tom Suozzi, and that's my district from Bayside. But I also support Mamdani. And I think the Democrats can run on both platforms as long as they're emphasizing affordability. And that's what everybody's trying to do. And, the thing about capitalism is the trickle-down theory never worked, and it's actually non-existent right now. And the reason, Mr. Suozzi, why we pay more taxes here is because we have better services. I have friends in other cities and towns and states where they don't have as good access to healthcare. They don't have healthcare. They don't have as good access to education, especially for special ed kids, transportation, etc. We pay for that, and that's why we have it here. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Danny just said. I mean, he's 100% right in the points that he just made. And there are flaws in the existing status quo that have to be repaired. And that's what governing and politics is supposed to be about, is trying to repair those things and make things better.
Another listener asks, how is your economic policy different from the Republicans?
Well, the Republicans don't support increasing the minimum wage in our country. I mean, right now the minimum wage, as I said, is $7.25 an hour in 22 states. Let's say you make $10 an hour and you work 40 hours a week and you work 50 weeks a year, you get 2 weeks off. That's only $20,000 a year. If
What should it be, in your opinion?
I think it should be $25 a year, $25 an hour, at least. And I think we should support the PRO Act as well to support getting more unions in our country.
Another listener asks in a text, or just writes, the congressman would do well to hear from Franklin Roosevelt. And I guess the argument there is, if you look at the history, if you are writing in your Promise to America document that the Democratic Party has lost sight of what helped it govern and lead successfully historically, did FDR help the Democratic Party govern successfully with Social Security? Did LBJ with Medicare and Medicaid? Those, it's often been described, are core socialist, if you will, policies of the last 100 years.
So I certainly support Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, and we have to do a better job of making sure that they're funded for the long term. But we cannot defend the status quo of government either, because government's not being run very well in a lot of places throughout the United States of America. We need our government institutions to be competent and accountable and easier to navigate. And we have to do things to help people to build more and to innovate more and to deliver results for people. And so that's a fundamental part of the Promise to America. We're capitalist, we're not socialist. We want safety, not lawlessness. We're responsible, not reckless when it comes to the deficits in our country. We believe in government should solve problems, not create problems. We're mainstream, not extreme, and we're proud, not ashamed of America.
On the tax hikes, the Mamdani proposed tax hikes that you cited before, let me throw what I think would be his argument at you. He would say this is for the one for individuals is just 2 percentage points more on incomes over $1 million. As I understand it, that's only on the portion of the income that's over $1 million. So the first $1 million would get taxed at the current rate. If there's, let's say, a second $1 million, that person would pay another $20,000, 2%.
Yeah, I think the important point here, Brian, is that New York State and New York City are not competitive. We're losing the battle of people living in our state. We are seeing rapid growth in lower tax states throughout the country. And the challenge is not for us to have a race to the bottom. We don't want to become more like them. We like, as I think it was Danny was the guy's name that you had on before, we like the fact that we have good services here. We like the fact that we have money invested in people's health insurance, and that we have we pay our teachers and our police officers well, and we have other union officials, and we have good programs in our state. We don't want to be a race to the bottom like Florida and Texas. But we have to recognize that we're losing, throughout the Northeast and in many Democratic states, we're losing population relative to the rest of the country. As I said to you earlier, when I was born, there were over 40 members of Congress from New York State. Today, there's 26 members of Congress in New York State, and it's going down in the next census. But it's also going to go down in New Jersey and in Michigan and in Illinois and in California. And the whole idea of the blue wall is not going to exist anymore, because we're going to lose electoral votes and we're going to lose representation in Congress because people are leaving our states. Many people who do very well in New York State, they have a good union job, for example, they get a good pension. When they retire, where do they go? They go down to South Carolina or North Carolina, or now they're going to Tennessee, which has no income tax, or they're going down to Florida or Texas because their dollars go further. So we just have to recognize the economic reality that we can't continue to tax our way to the solutions state by state. It has to be done on a national level, at the federal level.
We've done specific segments about this leaving New York question, and there are competing points of view on this. The argument against what you just said would be that many stats have shown that it's the middle and working class fleeing New York at the highest rate, even while the area needs an attractive workforce to attract new companies. It's not taxes that are driving people out, it's unaffordability of private sector bills. And also there was let me finish the argument and you can say whatever you want. According to an article in the City Reporter, I don't know if you saw this just recently, major corporations are sweeping up office space in Mamdani's New York so far because of the workforce they expect to attract. That's 2026, with Mamdani as mayor possibly for another 7.5 years, on which those tech and other companies are placing big office space bets, reviving the office real estate economy. So why not look at the depletion of the working and middle class who might benefit from universal child care and these things that Mamdani is trying to fund as the bigger problem and the bigger solution to that problem?
Well, there's certainly a lot of problems that we need to address. There's not only one thing at a time, but related to the specific question of taxes, New York took a body blow when Donald Trump and the Republicans capped the state and local tax deduction at $10,000. It's now been increased to $40,000, which is a big benefit for a lot of the folks that you're talking about in the middle class. But we're still losing people because they can no longer deduct their state and local taxes. When we first set up the income tax in the United States of America in the early 1900s, many governors and mayors said, we don't want a federal income tax because we have to pick up the garbage and we have to do the schools and we have to do the police and the public safety. We've got to do all these things at the local level. We don't want you to tax us at the federal level. We need to collect the taxes at the local level. They said, oh, don't worry. As a resolution to this problem, this debate, we're going to give you a deduction of your state and local taxes. You won't have to pay federal taxes on the taxes you've already paid. And that was in place for 100 years. And then President Trump and the Republicans got rid of that in 2017, and they capped the deduction at $10,000. It's now back to $40,000. There's a lot of people that have left the state just because of the tax implications. And a lot of the wealthy people that leave our state are important, not because we need to protect the wealthy, but because of the fact that we need them here in our state for the revenues for our coffers. There's a report out today, I haven't had a chance to read it, about the people that have left New York State, New York City specifically, that paid so much in revenue in their taxes to the city government that's no longer available to the city government. In addition, when they leave New York State, they're no longer New York City. They're no longer giving money to the Metropolitan Museum of Art or to the opera or to the whatever the not-for-profit may be that they support, and they're instead supporting the Sarasota Opera Center and the not-for-profits in Florida and in Texas. So we can't afford to keep on losing. There's no debate, Brian, that we have lost relative power in our state compared to the rest of the country when we've gone from over 40 members of Congress in 1962 to 26 members now, and it's going down in the next census.
Right.
I mean, that's unassailable.
Those stats that I cited in the last question were published as the response of progressive groups to that particular new report. So there are the various sides on that.
We've lost members of Congress. You would agree with that, right? We've gone from over 40 members in 1962 when I was born, yes, to 26 members today. Clearly, and it's continuing to go down. It's going to go down in the next census.
Been more elsewhere. Hey, last thing before you go, I know we're just about out of time. Off topic, as a bipartisanship guy, do you have any specific memories of Lindsey Graham? I know he was in the Senate in your years, you're in the House, but an article in The Guardian, the Progressive Guardian, is headlined, "Beloved or Not, Lindsey Graham was a critical deal maker in Congress." And it says, for example, he became a negotiating partner with the liberal icon Senator Ted Kennedy and other Democrats on unsuccessful attempts at immigration reform, and was among the Gang of 14 that helped broker a bipartisan compromise over confirming Bush's judicial nominees. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about Lindsey Graham in that context, besides all the very pro-Trump, arguably anti-democracy and other partisan things he did.
Yeah, so I disagree with Lindsey Graham on so many different things, but I always liked the fact that he was a strong defender of Ukraine and was counseling Trump on a regular basis that he's got to stop giving so much deference to Putin. And that voice from his senior level as being someone that Trump got along with is going to be very seriously missed, because we need to defend Ukraine and to push back against Putin Putin, who's really just one of the worst actors on the world stage.
Congressman Tom Suozzi, Democrat from part of Queens and most of all of northern Nassau County. Thank you for joining us today. We always appreciate when you come on with us.
Thanks, Brian.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.
The United States is about to mark its 250th anniversary.
And so on the Global Story podcast from the BBC, we're telling surprising tales of American influence on the world stage and in ordinary people's lives all across the globe.
We have this ability to export our story, and a lot of people bought it.
I feel like the American dream is alive but not well.
From the BBC, it's the United States at 250.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts or find us on YouTube.